Hello, everyone, and welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host, Josh Deming, and today, Alex, Peter, and myself sat down to discuss Canada's preliminary roster for the upcoming CONCACAF Nations League semi-final matches. We took a look at Kyle Larin's incredible performance against Barcelona, and we did some Canadian quick hits. So hopefully you guys are excited, and if you are, let's get into the episode now. Alright guys, so diving right into it, the Canadian men's national team preliminary roster for the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals dropped. 53 names were on that list. There's a few big stories, but Peter, we have to start with Aidan Morris because we love dual national talk. It just, it gets the blood going and got me excited. I know there was a lot out there who weren't positive that he was Canadian. There were some rumors maybe back in March, but what was your take seeing him on that list?
It was a pleasant surprise, and he's not only a dual national, he's a tri-national, because as it turns out, he's eligible to play for Italy as well through, I believe it's his mother. So he is a triple threat. Now, clearly, I think the two priorities for him are going to be the US and Canada. It's been reported over the weekend that Canada made a hard push for him, and so we probably have another dual national saga on our hands. But this is a player who is going to be very highly coveted for both teams, even a US team that has a very loaded midfield, because he is the classic definition of what Alex likes to call a destroy and progress number 6 midfielder, in that he is very strong defensively. He has great vision, technique, in a lot of ways, very similar to Stefan Eustaquio. And that is probably going to excite a lot of Canadian fans because his ceiling really is at that level in terms of not just his on-the-ball qualities, the off-the-ball qualities, it's the attention to detail. Just like Eustaquio, they both like to survey the pitch, see their passing options that are available to them long before they even get the ball. They're aware of the possible transition threat from the opponents, and so they position themselves accordingly just in case their team loses possession in a certain area of the pitch. Little details like that for Morris to have at the age of 21 with really, we can still say, very little professional experience. That's very, very impressive. So whoever ends up getting him, they're going to be getting what looks to be a very quality player for sure. And I mean, he's not the only dual national to make that list. And these lists are always very interesting because typically these national teams, they always send out invites or feelers to, let's say, 40 to 50 guys before they have to pick a final squad. We just happen to be seeing the whole process now playing out in terms of the player pool now that John Herdman's going to be choosing from.
Now, I mean, with a World Cup coming up, obviously, in a few years' time that the US and Canada are obviously co-hosting, that gives opportunities to players, especially, American, Canadian dual nationals, that if they're not quite ready for maybe to make that US team, or they're looking for an area that they could try to make in Canada, the central midfield position to me is the perfect one. Given the fact that Atiba, is potentially on his way out, we're a little thin there. This is a dream profile for John Herdman, right, Alex? Because if I'm looking at this player, some of the underlying numbers, very good on the ball, passing's exceptional. He gets a lot of touches in a match. I think that's something midfielders like. But I mean, the last few matches, I've been keeping an eye on him now that, we know he's Canadian. He's getting close to 100 touches, and just seeing how technically gifted he's on the ball, I would just imagine him in a 3-man midfield with maybe a Kone Eustaquio. It's got to be very appealing maybe for Morris if he's ever going to make that switch.
Yeah, I think Canada's should push hard for him. Obviously, now that we know he is Canadian and eligible, I think it's something watching him this year for Columbus. He just does a lot in the midfield. I think he kind of came in as someone who's really active on the ball, defensively solid, your DNP midfielder, so to speak, as Peter put it. But also, I don't know, I think under Wilfried Nancy, he's added a bit to his game. I saw, the way he makes these late runs into the box. I see shades of what Nancy had a guy like Ismail Kone doing last year. These sorts of, make these sorts of, late runs in a box, get on the end of crosses more, be more involved in the final third. Because I think we always saw the talent on the ball, what he's able to do in terms of springing around, controlling the tempo of the game. And I think that profile is huge for Canada because, look, right now for Canada, if you're looking 26 and honestly even 2030, it's Kone to Eustaquio. It's, Kone can play as an 8. He can play as a 6, but we've seen his best work as kind of an 8 where he's shuttling the ball forward from back to front and just being all active in all zones. Eustaquio, we can see him play the 6 for Canada. We've also seen him play a very successful box-to-box all-around 8, midfielder for Porto. The nice thing with Morris is he complements both of those. Either you can play Eustaquio as a 6 and Morris plays more that 8, where he's kind of arriving late in that box, playing on the ball, playing alongside a Kone, or you can, play on the 6 and get him on the ball a bit more and let Eustáquio use that fitness to move around. And I think if you look long term, Tiba Hutchinson pretty much after this summer feels like it's kind of curtains for his successful and long career. Jonathan Osorio at 31, obviously he's someone who's very cerebral and should be around, but it's someone with injuries and whatnot. You don't know how much longer you can consistently maybe rely on his body. Certainly a guy like Mark Anthony Kaye as well, given his form at TFC, a guy like Morris could push that. And given how young he is, 21, and his ceiling, there's no reason why he can't have a push like Eustáquio, who at 22, 23 was in the Mexican League, and look where he is now. A guy like Kone, who at 19 made his pro debut and rose to where he is. A guy like Morris could easily make a jump to Europe given his passport, and all of a sudden he's very much, that's a trio to build around for 5, 10, 12 years.
And that's where the conversation comes in. Because he's 21, you have to take a look at both sides. What could swing Morris to one direction? I mean, the U.S., he's had a couple of friendlies with them so far, but he's probably a little bit away right now from making that squad. But there is the Olympics coming up. I think that's potentially a big pull for him. But then I guess on the flip side, if he was going to become a regular pretty quickly for Canada, you also have, potentially, a Nations League, a Gold Cup, and then a Copa America. So just quickly before we move on, I'll go Alex and then Peter. What would be your biggest sell for the Canadian men's national team? Is it just simply playing time, Alex?
I'd say it's playing time and just, Kone, Eustáquio for the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's something where you look at the U.S., it's, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and, Yunus Musa are all very young. Even Luca de la Torre is pretty young as well. And that's something where that's 4 guys you're already going up against playing in top 5 leagues for minutes. Whereas for Canada, it's Kone, Eustáquio, and the door is kind of wide open for Morris to grab it and be that guy for the next 10 years. And you think you're hosting a World Cup, you could play it at home in 26 and 2030. Obviously, he'd still be quite young. I think that's just your sell.
And Peter?
I think it's the brotherhood, to be honest with you. Like the guys in the national team are so tight knit. It's a really good atmosphere. Having been in that environment myself, I can see it firsthand. I think any player could walk in there and feel instantly comfortable. So if you're also looking for the on the pitch attributes as well as maybe a benefit off the pitch, it's that you're going to be getting along very nicely with every single player that you're going to run into, because the culture that's been built there is really, really strong.
Yeah, I agree. I was going like this. I said good answer, but I also think having a player like maybe an Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, those type of stars, which unfortunately for the U.S., I just don't think they have at that level, I think could also be a big pull. But let's switch our attention now, guys, to a name that was off the list. And I mean, it's teammates of Aidan Morris, maybe a bit of a surprise. Maybe it came down to the position that, Mo Farsi plays for. But Peter, going back to you, what was your initial reaction when you saw a player who's thriving so well in MLS this season? He's taken a giant step. He's obviously has those links to Algeria, and he's rejected this call. What do you make of it?
I think it's a pretty decent play from Farsi in that he respectfully turned down a call up. So clearly he appreciated the invite, but he might also be looking at this thinking there's a lot of depth in those wide areas. I've been doing well in MLS, but if I really bunker down here and focus, I could end up maybe not being a bit part player for Canada the next time around a call-up comes up, whether that's for the Gold Cup, whether that's in September or October. Maybe instead of being number 4 or 5 on that depth chart, I could be number 2 or 3 if I just continue to keep honing my craft here in MLS, because he's still very young when it comes to MLS terms in terms of the amount of minutes he's played. And no doubt about it, he's made massive strides offensively and defensively. But I think with the more he plays, the better he is going to become, obviously, and then clearly end up making a probably better case for himself for the national team as well. So I don't think there's too much to worry about, and he's going to want to survey his options. So all in all, I think it's a clever play from the player's perspective. Maybe as a Canadian fan, as disappointed as you are, maybe not to see a player of his caliber on there.
I agree, and you have to respect dual nationals because this is a tough decision. You only can make it once, and you don't know what type of player you're going to turn into. I mean, Farsi's going up against Alistair Johnson, Tajon Buchanan, Richie Laryea for that right-hand side, whether that's right back or wing back. Alex, do you think it really comes down to the fact that, maybe he was looking at this Algeria team and maybe, a year or whatever it is when he makes that decision, be like, I see an opportunity to go right into that starting 11.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he's in a similar situation. Algeria versus Canada, they're both, relatively well off at at fullback, wingback, depending on what they play. I think it's just something where he obviously wants to take his time. That's great. And also it's something where, there's no rush for him in that type of decision. Like you mentioned with Canada, it's tough to see a path for him breaking into the national team in the next 12 months, right? Like, it feels like it's something that's going to take a while. It's going to take a strong season. It's going to take maybe a move abroad. It's going to take a lot more than just 2-3 months of form. And I think it's similar for Algeria, but you could also look at Algeria. I think if you look at their schedule, they have a bunch of friendlies coming up. Maybe it's something, including some that are outside of a FIFA window. Maybe something happens where he gets a call to one of those non-FIFA windows just to get his foot in the door. Because with Canada, again, you get a call up for Nations League and you see the field, you're cap-tied. If you're in the Gold Cup squad, you're cap-tied, all right? And it's something where maybe he tries to get in for those friendlies with Algeria. Maybe in the fall when Canada and T has friendlies, he tries to get his way in there and kind of gets a taste of both without locking him into either side. And I think given his situation, it's fair because, you have to consider those things where you look at, guys like Tajon Buchanan, Alistair Johnson. You could reasonably see them playing at the, national team for a long time. You're not looking at someone like in midfield, like with Morris. You're like, oh, okay, there's a bunch of guys about to retire. It's very different. So there's no reason rushing into something where you could be locked kind of out of a very busy position long term.
Kyle Larin had an incredible match midweek as Valladolid beat Barcelona 3-1, where Larin scored a goal, picked up an assist, and was the man of the match. He had quite the showing, didn't he, Peter?
100%, and could have scored right around the hour mark. Again, lovely ball into the box that he just slid past. It could have been a brace for him in the end, and just the runs he was making, the hold-up play that he had, really it was the typical performance you want from your striker if you're in a relegation battle. Larin delivered that, yet again proving that he could end up being the signing of the winter in La Liga.
I was about to say that. A few pundits said that he's the best winter signing in La Liga history. Alex, do you think he's living up to that title?
He's certainly doing his best. I mean, 11 goal contributions on a relegation-starved side that was struggling for goals. He scored against, the likes of Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, some other heavy hitters in Spain. It's everything's been on point for him, considering the form he was in from Bruges, the fact that this felt like a very low risk, minimal loan. He's ticked every box, and I think it's something where Real Valladolid are going to hope they can stay up and throw everything they have to keep him around, because he's fit their system every way. On the pitch, off the pitch, it's been a seamless match.
Moving along now to our Canadian quick hit section. Jonathan David has scored once again from the penalty spot over the weekend against Marseille as Lille picked up a 2-1 win. This puts them in a pretty good position to qualify for the Europa League if they can overtake Monaco. He's up to 22 goals this season, and he's scored 50 Ligue 1 goals. Absolutely incredible from the Canadian star.
Another week, another goal-scoring glut for Evelyn Vienne. She's now up to 9 goals after yet another solid weekend for Kristianstad. Already 9 goals this season to start with. That's a pretty good start to the year for her. Alistair Johnston, he's back in training for Celtic, less than 2 weeks away from the Scottish Cup final on June the 1st. Could he be back for it? If so, that could be a big boost for the Canadian national team ahead of a busy summer. And Ashley Lawrence is looking to be heading to Chelsea. According to reports, she has agreed a deal after some very solid years in France. Yet another Canadian joining the Blues over there across the pond.
It was a great month of May for Vanessa Gilles, as after winning the Coupe de France earlier this year, she and Lyon completed the domestic double by winning D1 Arkema in a thrilling 1-0 title decider over PSG, as Lyon gets the better of their rivals for the second time for a trophy in the matter of weeks. And before that game was huge news as well for Vanessa Gilles, as her loan from Angel City was extended for another year to 2024, which is huge news as she and Lyon chase the UCL next summer. Jordan Hoytema keeps on scoring for the OL Reign, this time a left-footed clinical finish in the box for her third goal in 4 NWSL League games recently. She's in a great vein of form, 4 goals in all competitions. Great to see another Canadian striker finding her feet. And on the subject of Canadian forwards finding goals, Clarissa Larissy had a much-needed breakout game, really, for Häcken over the weekend. Had a goal, had an assist. She's been finding great spots lately. She's up to now 2.5 XG on the season, but just her second goal, she's slightly been underperforming her finishing. So that just to see her coolly run through on goal, put that shot far post, it was much needed for her confidence, because Canada's going to need all the wingers in form that they can get with no Janine Beckie and Deanne Rose and Nichelle Prince, both in a race against time with their injuries.
That is all the time we have for in this edition of Canadians Abroad. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to tune in for next week's update.